Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Neela Fortune of Packer Collegiate, and on behalf of my colleagues at Packer and my colleagues at St. Anne's and Berkeley Carroll and Brooklyn Friends, we're really thrilled to have you here tonight in partnership for this year's informational evening on athletic recruitment and the college admissions process. For students who are interested in playing sports, the athletic process is a little different than the athletic recruitment process is different than just for students who are simply applying to college without athletics. And primarily it adds a layer and accelerates the process and requires students to be proactive in completely different ways. And given the nuances of the college process for athletes, we are really excited to have here with us tonight Wayne Mazzoni, who will be speaking about this process. And before I introduce Wayne, I just want to say a little something about the structure of our evening program. After I introduce Wayne, he's going to present, and you can put your questions in the chat, and we will go through your questions at the end of Wayne's presentation. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Wayne Mazzoni to you. Wayne has been a college coach for more than 30 years. He is highly regarded for his knowledge of the athletics recruiting process, and he's lectured to athletes and to parents at over 500 high schools. He is the author of several books on recruiting, on baseball and the mental game, and is a frequent guest on TV and radio stations. He's presented for us several times before, and we're very happy to have him back here with us again. Wayne is also a 1991 graduate of Gettysburg College, where he played football his freshman year and baseball his remaining 3. Thank you, Wayne, for being here with us tonight, and I'm gonna hand things over to you now.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here and have all the schools together. And again, in the past, I think we've done this twice, maybe 3 in-person times. And I believe now this is our second online one, which is great. It kind of can be really convenient. So as Neela said, the way the night works best is I'm going to go through my whole thing. You're welcome at any time to put a question into the chat. The reason it's probably best to answer it at the end is a good chance that a lot of the questions you have will actually be answered in the later part of this talk. So that's why it's probably best to hold off those questions to the end. The only other order of business, it'll show up again on the end, but I got this new little automated system with this 678 number you see on the screen now in the box. If you type in the word recruiting to that number, I think it asks for your email, if I recall correctly. I set it up a while ago, and you'll get the PowerPoint mailed out to you or emailed out to you directly. So, if you want to handwrite notes, great. If you want to do screenshots, great, but you'll get the whole PowerPoint sent to your email if you'd like. So what I want to do once I get off this slide, I think I accidentally hit it. You might have saw it come up a second ago. I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of preamble, if you will, what you're sort of facing, what student athletes are facing in this recruiting process. And then I really break the process down into 3 steps to give it some structure, because it can be overwhelming if you don't have a structured path to it. And I will explain ahead of time what those 3 steps are, and that will be the bulk of the talk. So without further ado, this is something, again, in person, I would always ask and have people yell out their answer. So you can tell the person next to you or just think the answer in your head if you'd like. But what % of high school athletes move on to play in college? So try to think about that answer. What % of high school athletes across all sports move on to play in college? And the answer is 7%. So you might have thought 1%, 2%, and all of a sudden 7% looks big. Maybe you thought 20% and 7% looks small. The reality is, another way to look at this number is 93% of high school athletes do not move on to play at any level of college. Here is the number. I'll just quickly put this on the screen. Here's the numbers, most recent ones at the NCAA tracks. They don't do every sport, but here's a number for the men's sports. You could see the high school participation rates, the number of college athletes, the overall percentage that go from high school to college, and then the breakdown from Division I, Division II, and Division III. Here's the number for the women. So if you want to look at your sport there, you can take a gander at it. If sometimes they don't, again, the NCAA just picks these sports that they track. So the bottom line is, you're up against a very competitive process that you're trying to tackle here. So I often get asked this: what do I have to have what does my son or daughter have to be in that 7%? So I've kind of boiled it down to this, maybe some obvious to not so obvious. Number one is you've got to be really good. You got to be really talented at your sport. You've got to be motivated to excel, because when you get to college, you don't just automatically get awarded a spot as a freshman. You have upperclassmen and they don't want to give up their spot. You got to be motivated constantly to be the best that you can be. And then, of course, you need the physical traits. Could be height, it could be speed, it could be strength that makes sense for your particular sport. So not just talented, but then also have the physical traits that go along for it. Number two, you need to be serious about your grades. Obviously, if you're looking at certain schools, you want to get into MIT, Pomona, Macalester, obviously you need elite grades. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about a coach is recruiting one goalie in the 2024 class. Why would they want to recruit someone who they're worried about their grades when they can recruit other kids that they know are going to take care of their grades? So you need to be serious about your schoolwork. The third thing is you need to have an understanding of this recruiting process. And I think most people know about 30 or 40% of the process from friends, from parents, from social media, from coaches, but they know enough to kind of almost be dangerous. Like they think they know, and they don't really have any structure to the process. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll have some structure to it. And then the final piece of the puzzle is, what is your development plan? What is your yearly, weekly, monthly, daily plan to develop your grades, to develop your skill, to develop your strength, your speed, your sleeping, your nutrition, all of that. And that's important, which I'll talk about later. Are you going to be the same athlete in junior year that you were in 8th and 9th grade, right? Obviously, you're going to physically mature, but are you going to be more structured? Are you going to really take ownership over your development? Because if not, someone in that 7% will do that. So before I go to the bulk of the talk, to the next slide, I'm going to give you the 60-second overview of what is upcoming. The first step is, what colleges are right for you, the athlete, based on the kind of person you are, the kind of student you are, and the kind of athlete you are. So how do we navigate that to get a workable list of schools from about, not every college has your sport, but roughly 3,500 colleges offer athletics. So how do you narrow down what's right for you? And that's step number one. Step number two is, once you've done that legwork and research, and you've got your 5 or 10 or 50 schools, whatever the number is, how do you go about navigating getting yourself to be on the radar screen of that coach at that school? And I'll talk about why recruiting is overwhelming for a college coach. Most people don't think about that. They think college coaches have it easy. It's hard for the athlete. That's actually not the case. So what do you have to do, excuse me, to get yourself, evaluated by a college coach? That's step two. And then step three is pretty involved also. It's, you are actually a recruit now. You've actually are getting recruited from 1 or 5 or 10 or 20 schools. What do you have to do from that moment you are a viable recruit till you commit to that college and then ultimately enroll in that? So without further ado, let's get to this first part of the slide. I know that this will be the easiest of the slides, because you have 4 schools here that have great counseling, programs. That's the reason this night is being put together in this first place, because they care. So this slide will be the easiest. I'm just going to hit it home because you could see at the top of this, the header, it says the broken leg scenario. Unfortunately, what that means is kids who've been playing squash, they've been playing soccer, they've been playing field hockey since age 5, and they play through high school and they love it and they get recruited and they go to college as a freshman and play. It's only about 55% of those kids that play all the way through their senior year. So whether it is injury, whether it's academic issues or internships, or you're not having any fun, or you get other interest, or you lose the passion, you get burnt out, you get a boyfriend, a girlfriend, coach changes, coach brings in players and out recruits you, you may not play your sport for 4 years. So for you to let sports be the main factor and you attend a school you don't like because you're getting interest from the coach, if your sport doesn't work out, you've mismanaged this whole process, which again, I don't think this audience tonight will do that, but I've seen it many, many times that people mismanage their choices because of a sport. So a lot of this stuff, which I'll put all of it on the screen right now, Obviously, the more you know about what you want, how far from home, what's the distance, what's the location of the school? Are you looking for a city campus? Do you want to go to the suburbs? Do you want to be rural? Are you looking for a school that has 1,500 students or 50,000 students? Do you know what you want to study? What are your grades? How much does cost play a factor, right? And there's many books and websites and college, board and Naviance and your guidance people. As I said, I think nothing in the beginning stages, there's nothing a ninth grader or a 10th grader could do that would be better than going to visit schools. I don't mean even, doing an open house. You don't have to do a formal admissions tour. You're not meeting coaches. Excuse me. I'm talking about this weekend, you're going to go see an aunt that lives in Boston. Well, you know what? How about on the way up, you pop in, you see Trinity on the way in Connecticut, maybe Wesleyan, you pass by Tufts, you go look at Babson, then you see your aunt, and then on the way back, maybe you pop in the Northeastern and BU and Harvard and whatever else school that floats your boat. Bryant, you want to go see Roger Williams or Endicott, just to see what you like. Because of all of us on this webinar, tomorrow decided to meet at Marist College. And then we debriefed after a tour of Marist. A third of us would go, oh my God, I love Marist. Please, can I enroll now? Like, what do I have to do to go to Marist? The other third of us would go, Marist is nice, but boy, I still would like to see a bunch of other schools. And another third would go, don't ever bring me back to this place. I hate it. And there's nothing wrong or right about Marist. I have a friend whose daughter just committed to Marist, loves the place. It's what's right for you. And sometimes we get sidetracked because we don't want to let our mom down. Our uncle says this and our teacher went to this school. You have to find out what's right for you. You're the one going to college. The rest of us, we had our turn. So you're trying to take this list of 2,500 or 3,000, schools and trying to shrink it down based on, even if you said, you know what, I think I want to be, 3 hours from Brooklyn. I want to be near a city, but outside of a city. I want 5 to 10,000 students. I want to be a chemical engineering major. Here's what my grades are. Here's my board scores if I'm taking them and looking at schools that are requiring them. And you start shrinking the list down. And maybe you get to 30, 40, 50, 100. It doesn't really matter. But again, if you're a serious student athlete, that's the place to start before we get to the next piece, which is where I'm going to go to now. So the question then is, as you've narrowed it down for non-sports factors, we need to narrow it further for the sports. And this is where people get completely lost, sidetracked, overwhelmed, misdirected. And of course, I put up here, and I feel comfortable now doing this because I'm, a parent myself. Parents are the worst judges of athletic talent that are out there, right? I'm sorry, but if we were all on the screen, we'd probably be laughing because we know it's true. I have 2 boys, right? Number one, parents are bad talent evaluators because we love our kids. That's one real reason. The other thing you don't realize is you're judging your kids against the high school competition and maybe their travel team from the area, their competition. You are not a coach that's recruiting nationally. You're not looking at kids in Texas and Florida and California and Pennsylvania. And certain sports, you're not recruiting in Spain and Portugal and Canada like other coaches are. So you don't see the bigger picture recruiting pool. And therefore you might think, well, certainly my daughter could play Division I volleyball when maybe she should really be playing Division III. And you're going to spend a year and a half only trying to get her in front of Division I coaches that it's going to ultimately not work out with. Whereas if you would have cut to the chase ahead of time, maybe you would have found the right school earlier. And sometimes you can hurt yourself by blowing off the Haverfords and the Franklin and Marshalls and the Dickinsons and the Swarthmores. And because you're looking at the Dukes and North Carolinas and Vanderbilts or whatever. And by the time you want to go back to Haverford and Gettysburg and they've moved on. So let's start talking about things that you could/should do to get a better idea of your talent level. The obvious most, first thing I would do, absolutely, is talk to the coach that I'm with on a regular basis. High school coach, you take lessons, you have a travel team, you got to ask that coach, hey coach, you're with me for 6 months, a year. You've been with me for a year or two. What level do you think is right for me? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So I don't think it's your high school coach's job to get you recruited. I really don't. It's not your athletic director's job, your guidance counselor's job, college counselor's job. It's your job. You care the most. So your goal is, hey, if I'm a sophomore in high school and I play tennis, I'd be having a sit down with my coach saying, listen, I'm interested in playing in college. Do you have any idea of what level you think is I need to work on? What do I need to get better at? Where do you see me? Am I Division 2, 1, 3, whatever the case is? So I would ask those coaches. Second thing might be obvious. A lot of people don't do it. Any kids that you know that you played with through high school, travel, or in any environment that are now freshmen, maybe sophomores in college, you could ask them, hey, did you make the right choice? Is the school you're at the right level for you? Or you're never going to play and you're getting frustrated? Or maybe you went to a school and you go, boy, I could have really reached higher. I'm really already playing one of the best players in the team. I wish I could have done it over again and gone to a higher level. Send those friends a text, talk to them when they're home on break, get some feedback. You know their talent level. They probably know your talent level, and they could give you good advice. And frankly, that's what college coaches do. If a coach has a player from one of your teams, your high school team or your travel team, and they find out about that player and they know that player, the coach is going to go to that kid and say, hey, tell me about Sally. I just heard about her. What do you think? Can she play at our level? So why don't you work it in reverse and ask the peer, ask your friend, former teammate, whatever, what they think is the right level for you. The college camps, the showcases, this has a role we'll talk about in the next section. I'm not talking about it for the purposes of recruiting. I'm talking about an event that's the Penn State volleyball camp. How could that help you figure out how good you are as it pertains to college volleyball? Two ways. One is a lot of camps, not everyone, you have to do your research. A lot of them make that part of their camp environment. We will evaluate you. At the end of the 3-day Penn State camp, a college coach will grade you out and give you the report handwritten or send it to you. You are a Division III volleyball player. Here's why. Here's what you did well. Here's what you need to work on. At the moment right now, we don't see you playing college volleyball because of such and such. So you get an actual grade from someone that does this for a living. The second benefit of going to these events is you're around your competition. And maybe you get to really realize, holy cow, look how good everybody is here. And, if you go to, stick with that example. If you go to the Penn State volleyball camp and there's 250 girls there, and in your gut, you're one of the best 5 or 10, you will be a Division I volleyball player getting scholarship money. It's just fact. If you go to that same camp and you're like, oh my God, I'm in the bottom 5 or 10 girls, you probably are not good enough to play at any college level. But sometimes the best thing that you can get, and I'm going to put it on the screen here, is you get motivated. Holy cow, look how strong these girls are. Look at their skills. And you get motivated to do that. Most coaches in their lives have seen ninth graders. They didn't think we're going to play at the college level. And a year later, 18 months later, 2 years later, this person is incredibly better. Maybe they physically matured, but most of the time they woke up by seeing what the competition was. Fourth thing you can do, should do. That's why it's bolded and underlined and exclamation pointed there. Go watch colleges in your sport. Go watch them practice. Go watch them play games. Yeah, you could turn on TV and some of the stuff will be there. ESPN3, ESPNU, right? But all sports look easier on TV. You can't tell the speed, the strength, the intensity from the TV. So I would encourage you, if your sport is field hockey, I'd go watch Marist play field hockey. I'd go watch Pace play field hockey. I'd go watch WestConn play field hockey, or some other school that fits, that's local to you. And you might say, well, why am I doing that? I only want to go play in the West Coast, or I only want to go play down south. Well, Division I field hockey, Division II field hockey, Division III field hockey, they're pretty much standard across the board, unless you're talking the top 10, 15, 20 power Division I programs where maybe the level is really that much better. But again, you could see in person, and I've had many people do this and tell me the following things. Holy mackerel, I didn't realize Division III, they were that good. I may not even be able to play Division III. I thought that was 13th grade. That was going to be a piece of cake. Holy mackerel, that's really, really good. And I've also had kids go see Division I going, wow, I thought that was going to be way over my head. I actually realized that might actually be in my wheelhouse. Maybe I could play at that level if I just did X, Y, and Z. So it could work both ways, but I highly encourage you to do that. You could possibly meet the coach, you could set it up that way, or you could just pop in and watch a game, watch a practice, and do that. The last piece of this is, and this probably applies to many of us on this call here, is individual sport athletes have it easier. It's just fact. You play tennis, you play golf, you swim, you run track, those types of things. We should know it's easier to figure out your talent level because you have a very specific result in the mile, or a USTA ranking, or a PGA handicap, or a 200-meter backstroke time that you can basically go to the college and see what their athletes do and say, all right, here's what I am now. That's pretty much probably Division II, unless I get my times down or get stronger or such and such. This is the level I'm headed to. Whereas you really can't do that in a team sport. You can't take statistics because college coaches don't care about your statistics because they don't know your level of competition. You might have great numbers. Maybe this basketball season, you scored 27 points a game, and that looks great on a profile. Except when the coach digs deeper, they find out that you played 6 games against really weak teams. You scored 45 points a night. But then on the 2 games that you played of your best competition, where the guys on the other team were committed to college, when you played that really good team, now you only scored 6 points in a game. But your overall average says 27 points. That looks great. Also, you can't compare locations, right? Different parts of the country, overseas. Scoring 27 points a game in Portugal might be a lot harder to do than it is in our area. Who knows? Okay, sport by sport. So people think you're going to wow someone with a resume or a profile. Team sport coaches basically don't care. We'll talk about next what they do care about, but they don't really care about your team sport stats like an individual sport. So again, ultimately what you're trying to do, you're not going to get it by the end of this webinar. You're not going to solve it tomorrow. Maybe it's going to take you months. Maybe it's going to take you 6 months. Maybe by the end of the spring or the summer, you basically say, you know what? It looks like I'm a lower level Division I player. Not the highest level, not the power programs, but I could play at the lower levels of Division I of my sport. So here's what my list is going to be. I'm going to pick 2 or 3 elite level D3 programs. I'm going to pick schools that fit that are elite level Division II programs, all the lower level Division I programs, and then maybe 1 or 2 reach higher level Division I programs. And there's my list. There's my list that has everything I want. It fits my personality. It fits me academically. It fits me athletically. It could be 3 schools. It could be 23 schools, whatever. The number is irrelevant. It's that these schools meet, at least at this time, meet my needs. Now, things change. Your academics change. You decide you want to change your major. You thought you wanted to go West Coast as a freshman. You change your mind as you get to a sophomore, junior, when you realize, oh my God, I don't want to fly across the country for school. It's a free world. You could change your list at any time. But without a list, unless you are one of the best players of all time at your high school, one of the best players in your area, you will get overlooked. Recruiting is too difficult that you will not stand out from that crowd unless you're structured and focused. And again, the list could change based on your athletics. You get stronger, you get taller, growth spurt, get better, skill development. That absolutely can change. But again, I think I've hit home enough to say the place to start in this process is doing your research and figuring out the right places for you, which will pay off when we get to the next section, which we're about to get to now. So as I do that here, and you can read what's on the screen, I want to first talk about, from a college coach's perspective, why recruiting is torturous. It's torturous because every sport other than football has 2 or 3 coaches at that university handling recruiting. So if you want to play field hockey at Bucknell, they have 2 or 3 coaches that handle the entire recruiting. That's a lot of kids playing high school field hockey in this big country of ours with a lot of travel teams and tournaments and events, and it's overwhelming. So you have budget restrictions, you have NCAA rules. Their season is your high school season. So, and then not to mention, you find this girl you like, and then you call her up. Oh my God, I saw you play at this Pennsylvania tournament. You are fantastic. You know, Bucknell's a great institution. And then the girl says, you know what, I have low grades, I can't get in. Or the girl says, that's really nice, but I'm talking to Duke and North Carolina, and those are my top schools, and I appreciate the call, but I don't see myself going to Bucknell. You get rejected a lot as a college coach. So your goal here with what I'm about to talk about is to get in front of a coach, to get evaluated, even if you get a no. So at the very beginning, I said 93% of high school athletes will not play organized NCAA, NAIA college level sports. Out of that 93%, 80% of them never have one meaningful conversation with a college coach where that college coach says, we really think you're great. Your grades aren't good enough. That's a rejection. They could say, we don't need your position. We have center backs for the class of 24. We're all set. That's a rejection. They might say, you know what? We just think your talent level's a little bit below what we need for the program. If you get a rejection and a no like that, you should come to school the next day, high five everybody, hug people, and just be thrilled. Because getting a no means you're doing the right things, and eventually you'll get a yes. You don't need 17 out of 17 yeses on your list. If you have a list of 17 schools and 3 or 4 show you some interest, massive, you'll get recruited by 3 or 4 schools, and you'll pick one of those, and you'll have an unbelievable career and life and experience doing that if you do the rest of it as I talk about. So getting a no is a good thing. Getting a no leads to a yes. So let's talk about now the things that you can do. Nothing beats this. Nothing beats being at the same place at the same time as a college coach on your list, and they take their eyeballs and they put them on you and they watch you play. Whether that's high school, whether that's travel, whether that's at a camp, okay, which we're going to talk about all of those things. So anytime you contact a coach or have any communication, or you have a social media account, Twitter, Instagram, whatever the case is, you should have your schedule. You should have your high school schedule. You should have your travel schedule. You should have events that you're going to, camps that you've signed up for, so that if a coach has this event, coaches don't do this, by the way. Coaches don't go, hey, it's June. Boy, it's a nice weekend. I'd love to go to the Jersey Shore with the rest of my family. But you know what? I'm just going to drive, and I'm going to go to Delaware and just see if there's any good players today. No, you basically go to this tournament knowing that you're going to look at 5 or 6 players that you've heard about. And while you're looking at those 5 or 6 players, you're obviously going to use your eyes and see if any other players jump out. But coaches go to events because they've communicated with players and they're looking specifically for players at tournaments, events, etc. Now, camps, we could talk an hour about camps, so I'm going to give you the quick version. Some camps stink. Some camps mismarket themselves. Some camps are overpriced. The bottom line is there's 2 types of camps. One type of camp is an independent business, like an Exact camp. If you play soccer, you've probably heard of an Exact camp. Exact is a business that is running it for profit, that hires 15 college coaches to be at their camp. They pay those coaches. The good news is when you sign up for an Exact camp, if they tell you those 15 schools are going to be there, guess what? They're going to be there. They've been paid to be there. As opposed to some random summer tournament or game that you have, you might go to that game. You have no idea if a college coach is going to show up, much less the coach that you want to be there, much less that coach watches your 8 o'clock game on field 5 when, you might be at a different field or whatnot. So to match up the 2 sides in a regular game is difficult. That's why camps are there in the first place. The best thing you can do, if you're taking any note of the whole night, this is when I would do it. The best thing you could do is go to that college's ID or prospect camp in your sport. So if you want to play field hockey at Bucknell, I'd go to Bucknell's website to field hockey, and I'd look to see when they have their camp. It's probably listed already. If not, they're going to list it in the near future. College coaches can't do tryouts. We can't say, come up, jump in practice. We'll let you know if we want to recruit you. They can't say, hey, pop in the middle of July. We'll work you out in a practice, in our own skills session. They can't do it. That's why there are camps in the first place. And the reason I like college camps specifically is about 5 or 6 reasons. So I'll go through them. Number one, they're the cheapest. So instead of being $1,000 to go to a camp where 15 coaches are going to be at, Bucknell's going to run their field hockey camp. It's going to be $75 to $95. That's one. Number two, you'll get to see the campus. You'll get to see the field hockey facilities. All their coaches will be there. On any given day, this coach is in Maine, This one's in Florida, that one's in Pittsburgh recruiting. When they have their own camp, all the coaches are right there. They communicate, hey, what do you think of this player? It moves very fast. You get to meet players on the team. Every coach has players help them run the camp. And you could get to talk to a kid in the team and say, hey, do you like it? What do you think? You know, if you could redo your choice again, would you pick this? What's the goods and the bads here? What's coach really like, etc. Also, you bypass the coach wondering, gee, does this girl or guy like Bucknell? Well, if you signed up for the Bucknell camp, you must like Bucknell. You're not wasting the time there. So most coaches will tell you, this is not for every sport at every school. Most coaches will say a third of their roster comes from their own camp. 1/3 of their roster comes from their own camp. So again, when your list is focused, you could pick some of these to go to. If you don't have a list, it can be overwhelming to know what to do, or you're going to have to go to these bigger camp events that are expensive and hope that you get seen by a school at on your list. Second thing then, and I'm sure this is where there'll be some questions, but I want to keep rolling through. Video. You got to have some video in some capacity in some way, especially if the school on your list is not in the area, right? So you want to go out west, Midwest, South. They're not in Brooklyn all the time looking for players, right? You need to have some video. That video could be formally done with a school camera shooting it. It could be done on an iPhone in a practice. Any video is good. Highlights are great. Full games are great. Anything. I mean, we could talk forever about the video, but I think the bottom line is to encourage you that you need something. It doesn't need production. It doesn't need fading in with music and smoke coming up and all that stuff. It could be an old school 2-minute video filmed off a phone, uploaded to YouTube and sent out. Or clips posted on Twitter, clips posted on Instagram, etc. And we'll talk more about the Twitter and Instagram, and they can help, but I think people get sidetracked, which I promise I'll cover after. You got to have some video. Video can be one of the tools of your calling card, you know, of your way you're presenting yourself. But I know college coaches that watch every video that's ever come in. I know they have coaches that are on Twitter all the time looking at that stuff. And then I know other college coaches, they don't watch any video, or they won't watch any video unless they've seen you live. Or maybe they don't watch video until this happens. They get a call about you. They get a call from your high school coach. They get a call from your travel coach. They get a call from a lesson coach. They get a call from a former pro. They get a call from an alum. Somebody that same way in the world of work, a job opening comes, 500 resumes go in. How do maybe the 5 or 6 or 10 people get picked out for an interview? Maybe because someone calls and says, hey, one of the kids in that pile is somebody I'd like you to take a look at. You don't automatically get the job. You're probably going to get an interview. Same way here. Again, what I'm trying to tell you is things that you should be doing to go from the noise of everybody trying to get the Colgate coach to know about them to now all of a sudden, because your high school coach called, then you send a video and then you went to this camp. You went from an unknown at Colgate, and 2 months later, the Colgate coach knows completely who you are from St. Anne's or Packer or whatever the case is. And then evaluates you, and you might get rejected from Colgate, but at least you actually got in the game and the coach knew who you were. And maybe then it doesn't work at Colgate. Maybe it works out at Villanova, or maybe it works out at St. Joe's or with Drexel, or who goes on and on and on and on. Okay. So it's usually a combination of these things that help you get in front of a coach. And you could see I wrote there's not one way that's magic. It's not the magic camp or my high school coach got all the connections. You got to do a little bit of everything. If you're motivated, and I probably should have said this in the beginning, for those athletes that are listening, if I asked you on a 1 to 10 scale, how much you want to play your sport at the college level, if your answer is not 12, this is going to be really hard. If it's got to be a 10 or up. If you're like, well, 6 or 7, it's too hard, it's too competitive, and you're not going to probably do all the things that I've just told you to do because they require work. They require you going into your high school coach and saying, listen, coach, I've narrowed it down. My top 3 schools are such and such. Can you please make a phone call for me? You got to put yourself out there and ask. Your coach should do that unless they don't think you can play at that school. That's the only time a coach is going to say, listen, I can't call Texas at Austin, right? Like, I don't think you could play at that level. I'm not going to do that because that's going to be bad for my reputation. But if you say to them, hey, can you call Susquehanna for me? And coach should say, yeah, that's a great school. I'd be happy to do that. But if you expect anyone to manage your recruiting process and meet with you and follow up constantly, it's not going to happen. Not even the travel coach, where they get paid to do that because they got a million things going on with their teams and all their players. You got to be a squeaky wheel, and you got to ask people to help you and use your references. During COVID, that's all anyone could do. No one could go watch live, maybe some video, but it was all about references. And it's still a huge piece of the puzzle. So, and again, I'm going to go through these notes here at the bottom. Follow up. You go to a camp, you sent the video, someone made a phone call for you. Follow up. Hey, coach, you saw me at camp. I sent my video, and then my high school coach called. Did you get a chance to get any feedback? Can you let me know what you think? Most people don't do that because they don't want to get rejected. So they think, well, since I haven't been officially rejected from Purdue, maybe it'll work with Purdue. I'd rather get a quick rejection and move on to a school that is going to want me than to just spend time spinning my wheels thinking I got something going when it's not. Recruiting services. I hate every one of them that you've ever heard of. NCSA, College Prospects of America, Be Recruited, Sports Recruits. Some of them are worse than others because some of them are free. And they'll just give you a place to put a profile, whatever. Some of them are thousands of dollars. College coaches don't want to hear from a third party. They want to hear from you. So I don't like any recruiting service. Now, if you have, for example, you have a coach in your area, coached 30 years of tennis at NYU, retired, and is going to work with some tennis player on developing their tennis and helping them with recruiting, I'd pay that person whatever. But I'm not paying some company that handles all athletes and all sports, et cetera, and it just doesn't work. That's not how college, and I know because I've done for my books, I do surveys with college coaches and basically ask them, what are the methods that you find your players in your roster? And do you use any recruiting services? And they all write back, no, we don't use any recruiting services. And we delete all the kids that send in stuff from the recruiting services. So my advice is to stay away from that. You got to do the legwork yourself. Last piece on this, and again, I'm sure there'll be questions when we get to the end. Get this, ask this all the time. When's the right time to do this? Send videos, go to camps, do all this stuff. The generic answer is junior year. Most kids physically are developed, skill-wise developed, have enough academic information by junior year to start putting themselves out there in this process. Certainly summer between junior and senior year might be the biggest time across the board. However, the bigger the school, meaning more revenue producing, UCLA, Florida State, Syracuse, Boston College, the bigger the school and the bigger their athletic department, the earlier it goes. So those schools I mentioned have committed already verbally 26s. Current freshmen have committed in all the various sports to a lot of those schools. Now we could talk forever. They can actually go there. Was the verbal binding? What does it all mean? However, reason I'm saying it is there is a rule that most people know, which I think is the worst rule that is public. A college coach can't initiate contact until September 1 of your junior year. That is a rule. That's the rule. That's a ridiculous rule for everyone to know. Here's why. The reason that rule is put into play is, let's say at one of the schools on here, there's a freshman who's 7 foot on the basketball team. If there were no rules preventing the way that this person could be recruited, that person would have college coaches sleeping out or be in RVs at the front of the school, and they would give that kid, buy houses for the kid. They would give the kid cars. They would give the kid money. They would do whatever. They would recruit that person like crazy starting in the 9th grade. So if that kid is not ready to attack or wants nothing to do with the recruiting process, a college coach is not allowed to initiate the recruiting process to that student athlete until their September 1 of their junior year. However, college coaches do this. They find a kid they like who's in 9th or 10th grade. They say to their high school coach, their travel coach, if if the kid is ready to start the recruiting process, we're really interested. Can you have so-and-so call me on Wednesday night at 7:15 and I'll answer the phone? The kid can initiate that first call or any call to the college coach. So the college coach is going to get the kid's number, put it in their phone, ask for the kid to call them at 7:15 on Wednesday night. If the kid wants to and ready, they call. The coach is allowed to make a conversation, can make an offer, and can do the same thing at camps. So the reason I bring that up is it gets confusing to people. Well, recruiting doesn't start until such and such a date. If you're really, really good and it's a big level program, it's going to start earlier. But again, typically it starts at some point in the junior year on that. Okay. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to move on from this topic, this part 2 of the talk, and move our way into part 3. I see some questions coming in the chat, but again, we're going to hold those to the end. All right. Before I go to the next slide and get to part 3 of this talk, it's a great time for me to explain how to know if you're being recruited. You'll know you're being recruited. It's going to be really obvious because the following things will happen. A college coach will either call you or ask you to call them. That's one way. Number 2, they text you. They direct message you on social media. They visit you at the high school. They ask for a visit at your house. They talk to you after a practice or a game. They make it very obvious that they're calling. So if you go, gee, I wonder if UConn is recruiting me because of such and such, it means they're not. There would be no confusion that they were recruiting you. It would be really, really obvious. Once you are a recruit, here's all the stuff that you need to tackle now. And this is where we get to this piece right here. And actually, this needs to be, let me see if I did it or not. Nope, I owe you an apology. Some of this stuff on this right here, it needs to be updated. I'm going to explain why. And then I also know that one of the schools, I believe it's St. Anne's, since the last time probably hasn't changed. They don't do formal grades, right? It's a different situation. Yeah, I got a thumbs up there. So I'm going to do this right now. Never done this in my whole, oh, wow. How did this happen? Oh, this is crazy. Hold on. I actually did do the job, but I did it here. I'm going to start with this and then backtrack. This is brand new as of January. Starting in January, the NCAA for Division I and II made a new ruling. You no longer need to have a corresponding SAT or ACT score along with your GPA like you previously did. And by previously, this is what it looked like previously. So previously, the NCAA wanted to know what your core GPA was in the 16 courses, English, Math, Social Studies, Science, that you took from 9th grade through senior year. And there was a whole corresponding thing. So you could see on the screen, if you had a 3.250 GPA, you needed a 580 on the math and verbal on the SAT and a 46 on the ACT, CUME. The lower your GPA, the higher your board score need to be. And then conversely, the higher your GPA, the lower your board score needs to be. And then that got changed as of January. Okay, so if I go back to here now, you could disregard part of this Division I and Division II thing. So look at Division I. All you need now, when you graduate your high school, in the 16 core courses, not your overall transcript, the 16 core courses, you need a minimum of a 2.3, and then St. Anne's could talk about how they deal with it with the NCAA, which they've had no problems for a long time. It works just fine. But maybe at the end, they can talk about how they do it with their system. So there's no sliding scale. Division II, 16 core courses, minimum of a 2.2. That's it. Division III, there is not this eligibility clearinghouse. Before we move off of this, let me explain 2 things I think that'll make sense of this. This is the NCAA's governing body that says grades matter. You have to have some semblance of academics to be able to play at the scholarship levels, which is Division I and II. Okay, so all this is basically somewhat of a formality that you have to actually go through before you play at the college level, Division I or II. The second piece of this is you can see here at the bottom, and this still holds true. If you're typically, most high schools want it in your junior year. If you're a junior athlete and you think you're going to be playing at the Division 1 or 2 level, you go to the NCAA's eligibility center, you create an account. You can see it says on the bottom right, you create an account and you fill out all this information. You pay $90. It goes to the NCAA and your school gets notified and they send the academic portion to the NCAA. If you're Division 3 or undecided, like I don't know if I'm going to play in college or what level is right for me, you could do the same thing, fill out the same information. You don't pay anything. And then if you go on to be a Division 3 player or undecided, you don't have to do anything else. What they want, though, is you to fill out this profile, because let's say all of a sudden a Division 1 or 2 school wants to recruit you. If you haven't done any of this work, it could take you up to 2 months for them to get your NCAA ID number and go into their portal and look up your grades. And if you do say, you know what, I'm going to play Division 3, I'm going to fill out this profile, nope, pay no money. And 6 months later, you go, you know what? A Division 1 coach called me. I'm really interested now. All you have to do is go in, pay $90, and your profile goes to an account overnight. So again, I think hopefully I covered that properly. Number one, your grades matter starting in 9th grade. The NCAA cares about your 16 core courses for Division 1 and 2. Your GPA upon graduation matters. St. Anne's has their own marking system, which, goes through no problem with this. They can explain it further. But this sliding scale is defunct now. The new rules are it's only your GPA, not board scores. All right. I think I rescued myself from that. All right. Switching gears, if you will. What I want to talk about here is these schools are recruiting you. Oh my God, this is fantastic. I didn't think I was, I was stressed for 6 months. My friends were getting attention and committing and I got nothing. And all of a sudden now these coaches are calling me, etc. That's great, except maybe you're getting 5 schools, 6 schools, 7 schools, 8 schools that are all recruiting you and telling you why you should go to that university. Your job now is to understand what life is like as a student athlete at each school. And most of it is just listening to what they tell you. Sometimes it's making sure you ask the questions for that 5 or 10 or 15% that they leave out, that they don't tell you for whatever reason. They're not happy with it. It's something that's bad at the school. So instead of lying, they just don't talk about it. So I've boiled it into these 4 categories. The 4 categories start with this: academics. You're going to college to get a degree, to get an education, get a job, right? So coach, this is great. I wanted to play, ice hockey in college, but boy, sounds like a huge commitment to play Division 1 ice hockey. How do you manage academics and ice hockey? Is there tutors? Is there study hall for hockey players? Do we get to pick classes around practices and games first before the regular student body gets to pick? And that makes it more convenient for us. Coach, is it okay to be any major? Can I be a bio major? Because we have labs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 to 5. I know we have ice time then. You got to ask that ahead of time rather than enroll. And the coach goes, oh, no. Hey, dude, bio majors don't work here on a hockey team. Has happened many times, right? So what is in store at this school to help you manage academics and athletics? That has to be answered first and foremost. Secondly, what is the coach like and the coaching staff like? Is that because here's why. And I have used this great example a coach said to me about 3 months ago. He said, I started to tell recruits now, there's 2 versions of me. There's golf cart version of me and there's regular me. Golf cart version of me is the recruiting version of me, where I drive you around campus in the golf cart, point out everything. I'm funny. I ask about everything. I care. I do it. And then regular version of me is where I'm going to yell and scream at you like crazy if you don't do things the way I want to. You miss practice or your grades go down. So I tell them that ahead of time so people know what they're getting into. A lot of coaches do not do that. You think you have this wonderful person. You get there to find out the coach is really different. So ask kids in the team, watch practices, watch games, talk to parents, do your research. Third thing where you should get some answers. Why did they recruit you? Why are they recruiting you? How many other girls in your 2024 class are you competing with? How many kids on the team play your position? Are they going to switch your position? Are they going to redshirt you as a freshman where you practice with the team but don't play games, and then you got to be there for a 50 or senior or grad student? So unless they tell you, you should absolutely ask that question. It's your right. You actually will go up in esteem in the coach's eyes when you're asking questions. When you just sit there and the coach says, "You have any questions?" You go, and you just stare and you look at your mom. It's not as good as when you say, "Hey, can you tell me about such and such? I noticed you had 4 forwards on the team that were all seniors that are graduating." Just show your interest. It works. It wins coaches over. And then the last thing, I'm going to rattle through a bunch of stuff that your head's going to spin, but it just goes to show you that maybe you don't really, you don't know the inside of college athletic departments unless you've worked. I've been at 6 schools in my life. So do they hand the equipment to you, or you got to buy it? Right? What do you get? Do you get shoes? Do you get skates? Do you get sneakers? Do you get rackets? Do you get bats? Or you got to buy it? Is there an equipment manager? Is there a team trainer? Is there a team doctor? Whose insurance pays for injury? What's the concussion policy and return to play? What's the drug testing policy? What's the academic policy? What grades do I have to keep up to keep getting my academic money or my athletic money? How do we travel? Do we travel by chartered plane? Do we travel by team bus? Do we travel in vans? Do the players drive themselves to practices and games? My God, you got to answer these questions, because you're narrowed down to 3 or 4 schools. Just like if you were going to go take a job at a new company and 3 or 4 companies wanted to hire you, you would ask a bunch of questions to find out what is the best place for you to go for your new job, the same way you would with when it comes to picking a school in college. And to go even further, here's another depressing slide of the night. Hopefully you're close enough to your computer to see. At the top left, it says 29,547. That is the last time that I signed into the transfer portal. That means there are 30,000 current athletes in the NCAA that want to leave where they're at. Not one sport. This is all sports, all divisions, all places, everything. Yes, some of them have unusual circumstances. Some of them went to Division III, graduated, they have COVID years left, they want to transfer to another school. But many of them are freshmen, sophomores that had no idea what they were getting into. They didn't know the coach was like it was. They didn't know their position was going to get switched. They didn't know they couldn't be a certain major. They didn't know practice was at 9 o'clock at night. They didn't know. And why didn't they know? Because they didn't ask. So my advice is ask up front, ask all the questions that possible, rather than be afraid to ask the questions, get there and be disgruntled and want to put yourself in the transfer portal and leave. And, transferring is never great. I mean, maybe you get yourself into a better situation, but you're going to go through hardship to do it. So, and the transfer portal, and that could be its own night. And there might be some questions on that. But what I like to do in these talks, and hopefully it's coming across the way I want, like to give you the bulk of the talk. And there's a lot of nuances where we're covering. I'll give out my cell phone. I'll give my email at the end. You want to contact me tomorrow, in a week, in a month, where you're like, hold on, I was on the talk in March 1st and I don't know what you were talking about that night. Now I just had this happen. Can you explain it? Happy to help. All right. This I'm going to put up all in one motion here. And the best way I've found to do this is, instead of talking theory, talk the way I've done it at every school, the way college coaches do it when it comes to admissions and you as a student athlete. Okay. So when a college coach likes you, they're going to call you, they're going to message you. And the first thing they're going to do is say, hey, I saw you, heard about you, really interested. Can you send me a transcript? Okay. Can you send me some grade? So yeah, those of you that are serious, you got to have an unofficial or any official copy on your phone, accessed at all times. So when a coach asks for it, you can send it out in 10 minutes, an hour that night. You don't have to go 3 weeks to be able to get it. And your counselor's away, you need to have it as soon as possible. Okay. The coach takes your transcript and does a pre-read sheet. The pre-read sheet basically asks the following information: your name, your date of birth, your phone number, your home address. Are you coming in as a freshman or a transfer? Are you entering which term? Fall of 23, spring of 24. Are you a scholarship candidate, a preferred walk-on candidate, a tryout candidate? It's going to have your possible major. It's going to have, are you honors eligible? It will have social media accounts. It'll ask for community service that you've done. It might ask for discipline that you've had, problems, high school issues, police issues, right? You have any record, it needs to go on there. That pre-read sheet and your transcript goes to admissions. Admissions responds whenever they can, hopefully that day, the next day, that week, with the following information I'm about to give you. Sometimes they say this person's inadmissible. Red alert. They're not saying you're denied. You haven't applied. You might be getting a transcript read in 10th grade, and you might have a lot of time to change your ability to get into that school. However, from a coaching standpoint, admissions is saying right now, today, March 1, it's a no-go here. The coach will say, listen, sorry to tell you, you're not admissible at this time. I advise you to do the following: look at other schools, or, do this. Kids will often say, I've had this 1,000 times, well, coach, I really like your school. I'm having a great semester. When I get my new report card, I'm updated grades. Can I resubmit them to you? Yes. Probably 99% of the time, within those 2 months, 3 months, the coach is going to round out their recruiting class. It's going hot and heavy by the time they're asking for transcripts. So maybe you'll have an opportunity to get into that school, but maybe the recruiting window is shut. So that's one circumstance. The other circumstance is you're admissible. Red alert, you're not admitted. You haven't applied. You could go from admissible second semester of sophomore year, first semester, junior year, to inadmissible if your grades go down, right? Again, admissions is saying at this moment in time, yes, this person's admissible, in which case we continue the recruiting process with this person. And hopefully, as I put on the screen here, you have an academic grant or award estimated at that time. So it might say at this moment with their grades, qualifies for $14,000 a year in academic grant. Coach is going to call and tell you, great news, you're admissible. Looks like you qualify for $14,000 a year if your grades stay the same. Your grades go up, maybe that goes to 16, 17,000. Your grades go down, maybe 14 becomes 12 or 11,000. But again, you're at least in the loop on it. This could happen really early in the process. And it's helpful for the coach because the coach knows where you stand academically, so they could decide what athletic money they want to add if it's a Division I or II school, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, I'm going to mention it here. It may come up at the end. I've learned not to do this and spend 10, 12 minutes on it because it doesn't apply to everybody. But for those of you looking at Ivies, looking at NESCAC, looking at the MITs of the world, the high academic schools, you need to Google what the academic index is for athletes. And I'll just give you the 15, 30-second version of it. Those levels of universities have agreed to recruit the same caliber student athlete academically, so that 1 year Columbia doesn't say, you know what, screw these rules. We're bringing in anybody. We're winning every sport. We're tired of this, right? So they've all agreed, hey, we're going to recruit basically the same type of student athlete. So you get this academic index, which helps them determine, do you fit this profile that fits for this league, for this conference, for this school? So if we want to ask at the end, I'm happy to go through it and talk about it, but it's something you need to speak that language if you're interested in one of those higher academic type schools. Okay, we keep on rolling. This slide here, a lot of information here. We're talking about the women's NCAA sports first. I'm going to explain a lot here, and then I'm going to explain more when we switch to the next slide, which has the men's. This is the NCAA mandated maximum amount of scholarships allowed per sport, per division. So if you want to look at women's basketball, Division II, they're allowed 10 scholarships. What does that mean? That means if that school costs $50,000 for tuition, room, board, and books, all in cost of $50,000. 50,000 times 10 is $500,000. That is that school, Division II schools, scholarship budget. That is not for each incoming recruiting class. That is spread out across the whole team, which encompasses freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, fifth-year senior, or grad student. So that's the whole team at once, fully funded 10 scholarships at $500,000. And then the coach knows, well, these two girls are graduating. This girl said she's not returning. We have 3 scholarships at $150,000. That's what we can give to the new set of girls coming in, whether they be high school, seniors coming in as freshmen or transfers. That simple. There's some nuances to this in that 2 sports only give either nothing. They can either give you nothing or the whole cost of the school, basketball or football. Everyone else can do whatever they want, meaning they can give you $1,500, they can give you $1,700, they can give you $9,658.27 if they want. They can divide it however they want. Basketball, you get 0 or all. Football, you get 0 or all. That's just the way it is. Let's go here now to the men's. Where this gets a bit confusing also is that not every school has the maximum amount that they're allowed, right? So you look here and you go, football, holy mackerel, 85 scholarships is a lot of scholarships. Yes, but look at Georgia, look at Alabama, look at all these schools. If they weren't capped at 85, they have enough revenue to put on scholarship 300 kids. And then they would wrangle up all the best players, and then the other schools wouldn't be able to afford it, and there would be no competition on the field. So believe it or not, these scholarship amounts, in essence, turn out to be a salary cap. Many schools just take Division I soccer, 9.9 scholarships they're allowed. Your power programs, your UNCs, NC State, UVAs, go on and on and on, Virginia Tech, they're fully funded. Big time athletic departments. Your Quinnipiacs, your Marist, your Hofstras, your Stony Brooks, Fairfield, Sacred Hearts, Riders, they're not fully funded. Why? Because there's not enough revenue in the athletic department to warrant that program being fully funded. So maybe they have 6 or 5 scholarships, and the coach maybe spreads it out however he or she pleases. They can give 11 players full rides if they think these are the 11 most important players, goalies, center backs, forwards, whatever they want to do. Or they could spread it out and give 30 players a third of a scholarship. Whatever they decide to do, they have a budget, and you add up all the players getting scholarship money with what the budget is, and there's how the coach knows how much the scholarship budget is to be. Now, again, going back to the last thing, the way it works for most kids at most schools, the kid will get, student athlete will get $15,000 in an academic offer. The coach maybe matches that offer with $15,000 for golf. Now there's $30,000. Sometimes they could say it in a value. We're going to offer you $30,000, or we're going to offer you 50% of the cost of the school. And that, we'll give you by April 1 to make a decision. We hope you accept. By April 1, we move on to the next player. That's kind of how the game goes, right? You get an offer when the coach feels you warrant it, and they put a deadline on it. So they don't sit around and wait, and you turn them down, and then they get turned down by everybody. Okay. All right. And I'm sure there'll be some questions there. I want to keep rolling to the final part of this. Again, I'll put this all up here. I think it works better this way. And we get down to this last piece. Again, I know this is covering a lot in an hour's time. Some of you haven't even been to college campuses yet or visited many schools. And then here we are, a slide of how do I make a decision on college when you've barely been to any. But I find 2 times really stressful in recruiting. If you really want to play, you're not getting interest. That's stressful. The next stressful time is 3 coaches have put a month deadline on you, and you don't know what to do. You can't sleep because you don't know which is the right choice. So all things being equal, I would go to the better academic school, meaning harder to get into or better for my major, or I would go to the school that just flat out costs less or gives me more financial aid, thus maybe more of an investment in you. Or I would go where you and the coach have the best connection. Again, you're down the Lehigh, Lafayette, Bucknell. You like them all. Can't go wrong. 3 great schools. You and the Lehigh coach hit it off the most. Maybe I make that the deciding factor. The best thing to do, and I'm sure you've heard this advice before, but especially as an athlete, is to make a visit, a 1-day visit, half day, day and a half, 48 hours, overnight. You go sit in on class, maybe meet a professor in your major, go to cafeteria, eat the food, go watch a practice or a game, go go to see the dorms, go to an event on campus, and basically test drive that school. And then typically if you do that at 2 or 3 or 4 places, your gut will tell you which is the right fit for you based on seeing everything there. I think those are the happiest students that basically test drive the school with the most, relevant information. All right, so here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put this on the screen right here. If you tuned in late, this 678 number, you text the word recruiting to that, the PowerPoint will automatically go out. My stuff is right there, the 203-260, that's my cell phone. And then my wayne@waynemazoni.com is my email where you can feel free to reach me at any time. So let's now open it back up. I'm going to take a sip of my least favorite grapefruit flavored seltzer. Oh, I don't really like grapefruit. And we're going to start asking some questions. And I highly encourage you to stick around for some questions. Sometimes the best information comes from the questions. So, and if any of you want to add anything to that, or St. Anne's want to talk grades, anything you guys need to cover, let's go ahead and do that as well.
I think we can move into the Q&A. Wayne, you mentioned that you'd seen some come in, so they may have been sent to you directly. There are no questions yet in the general chat. So Wayne, I can't see the ones that have come to you directly, but if people still have questions that they want to pose, if you can put them in the chat for everyone, or you can send them directly to me, Lisa Shambaugh.
Okay, so I have seen this, and I don't know, maybe because I'm hosting, who knows how it turned out, but I see a few, so I'll start with this. I understand you hate recruiting services. One has been recommended as at the baseline level by other recruited players for ease of access to all coach emails in one place and tracking to reflect who has actually viewed the video. Okay, do all emails from the sites come back as coming from the player's service or as the personal account? So let's go through it. Here's why I don't like recruiting services at all, and why I also don't like it for even the reasons you mentioned. I think college coaches will oftentimes have a student manager or a graduate assistant that they will have go on to such a site and basically go through profiles and pull off email addresses and invite kids to camp. So a kid goes, oh, this person viewed my profile. They looked at my video. When the reality was some junior coach signed in, or some sophomore kid who's a student manager signed into that account to grab your email address to invite you to camp. And from the outside looking in, oh my God, Purdue actually looked at my video. And so listen, if you've gotten personal feedback that someone really does think it helped them, I have no problem with it. My problem with a recruiting service is you go, oh, we've paid this company. We don't need to do anything now because they're doing it, but yet they're not effective at it because that coach knows. And I'll get really detailed on this. So I'll take NCSA as one. And if anyone works for NCSA, you're going to want to hunt me down. But so I'd get an email from, this is early on in my career, I'd get an email from NCSA. Let's just take when I was working at Sacred Heart. Joe is interested in your program. He throws, baseball. He throws 78 miles per hour, and he has a 2.4 GPA. He's really interested in your school. He can't get in. He's not good enough. Then I might get one. Well, this kid, it has a 4.1 GPA and throws 92 miles per hour. He's also not coming to Sacred Heart because he's too smart and too good. So you go, oh, this one doesn't fit. This one doesn't fit. This, and all of a sudden you realize that when 99 out of 100 don't fit, I'm not going to spend my time doing this. I'm just not going to go that route. So hopefully that was a long-winded way to say most coaches don't like them. If there's a particular one that someone has had experience with and like, by all means, use it for that, but don't rely solely on that. For soccer D1, the date is June after the sophomore year. Fine. So yeah, June after the sophomore year, September 1 of the senior year. Same thing. That's, again, these rules are real rules. A college coach can't call a ninth grade, not allowed. But you will also, we said soccer, I guarantee you who typed that in probably know a kid who's a freshman or a sophomore who's committed to a college when the date says they can't contact them until sophomore year. Have the Ivies changed their requirements for an average score for their team? I'm not sure what you mean by the average score. If you mean an index, an academic index, the index changes year to year. So let's talk about that. The academic index for athletes is based on the previous year's entire freshman class grades. So the academic index at Cornell is going to change every single year based on the previous year's full student enrollment as freshmen. So that means the tennis team at Cornell, if they bring in 6 recruits, those 6 recruits, when you add them up, must be in a standard deviation of all the kids that were admitted to Cornell the year before. So it changes on a year-to-year basis. Hopefully that makes sense. Anything you would advise for a student interested in D3 or even a club ski competition in college? All right, time out here on that one. Division III recruits the same way and as hard as Duke and UCLA and Stanford and Rice and Pepperdine. The only difference, they can't give you a line item that says we're giving you $25,000 for your sport. The process is the same. It's equally as competitive. Getting recruited to go to Middlebury is as hard as getting recruited to go to Stanford. That's fact. Absolutely. So I don't want, and the reason I'm saying that is I don't want to lump club in with Division III. Club is an absolutely fantastic opportunity and option for a lot of kids. You get to keep your sport going. You get to make friends. You have a group of kids that you hit it off with at the school. It's awesome. And they might slightly recruit. It just doesn't fall under the NCAA guidelines. Club sports don't fall under the NCAA parameters and don't follow a lot of the things that we talked about tonight, but should be an absolutely viable option for a lot of kids because it's a great experience. Most colleges have a very robust clubs program. Does the scholarship financial aid apply to all the conferences? Okay, I think by that you mean, do those numbers, are they the same in the ACC, SEC, Patriot League? It's yes. The answer is yes. The amount of scholarships allowed go across every single sport in the NCAA. There's the difference, and my God, this could be the whole night. We could talk a whole night about this, and I'd have you raise your hand if we were in person, of how many people know what the NIL is. Name, image, and likeness. So here's where that's different now. Okay. I think most know it, but I'm going to talk about it. So let's say you're recruited. Here's the difference in terms of money from the haves and have-nots. So if you're recruited to play at Hofstra with scholarship money, first of all, fantastic, great school. You're going to get to keep playing your sport at the Division I level, and you're going to get money to do it. Unbelievable. Hofstra probably has no name, image, and likeness money. If you go to Texas, playing the same sport, doing the same thing, not only are you going to get your scholarship, you might get $25,000 a year in a legit bonus NIL money right off the top of it. Why? Because Texas has a massive amount of donors and people involved in helping their program be dominant. So you're going to get NIL money on top of that. Now, to me, I hate NIL money for one reason. And the reason I hate it is kids are leaving schools. Oh, I'm at XYZ school, but I'm going to transfer to this school because I know I can get more NIL money. I get it. I guess maybe if that was me, the athlete, I might do it too. But I hate when kids are recruited, developed at a certain place and leave because another school has more NIL money for them. All right. You mentioned a preferred walk-on when talking about the pre-read. Could you talk about what that would mean for admissions? Absolutely. Great question. So you guys are asking really good questions. Let me first make sure I explain this as the difference between a preferred walk-on as a coach, and then we'll talk about it from admissions. Preferred walk-on should have a new name. It should be like a gray walk-on or a red walk-on. They should give it a name. What that means when you're a preferred walk-on is the coach really desperately wants you. You have a roster spot on that team. They just do not have any scholarship money left to give you. So Take Hofstra. Hofstra is going to recruit 9 people for the class of 24, but they have only scholarship money for 6 of them. The other 3 are recruited walk-ons, the kids that probably got recruited at other schools, but wanted to go to Hofstra and were guaranteed a roster spot. That's different from a walk-on who the coach doesn't know anything about, hasn't promised anything to, and then just straight up tries out for the team when they see a sign, soccer tryouts or tennis tryouts, or that's a regular walk-on. Your chances of making a team as a regular walk-on are unbelievably low. So to me, that recruited walk-on means someone that was actually recruited, just not giving scholarship money. How does standardized test optionality apply to a student athlete at a school with an academic index? Really good, smart question. Really good, smart question. I think when you're talking about, and maybe one of the counselors jump in here with this, I'm assuming here we're talking about an Ivy. Okay. So, and Lisa, I don't know if you want to, I'm gonna put you on the spot since you're sharing your video here. Are the Ivies, are many of the Ivies test optional now or not really?
Yeah, and I think your counselors at your schools would work really carefully with each individual student related to each school that you're applying to and whether you should be incorporating your scores in that in your application for that school. I guess the question is like, is it really optional for coaches and recruiting students?
Well, see, and this is a great thing. And this is why whoever asked that question, I really enjoy it, because up until January, for the history of the NCAA, you had to take an SAT or an ACT score to play at the Division I level. You had to. There wasn't, I'm not going to test out. You had to, because of the NCAA rule that had your core GPA with the sliding scale of your SAT or ACT score. Since January, so we're talking a month ago, they've dropped that requirement. You no longer have to take an SAT or an ACT with that sliding scale for the eligibility clearinghouse. My answer is I have no idea now how that factors in to the Ivy League and the academic index. I do not know the answer, and I don't like not knowing the answer. So tonight, I'm going to text my contacts in the Ivies, and luckily I got a bunch. I'm going to say, hey, I got a question tonight. Now that it's test option, now that you don't need your SAT, ACT for the clearinghouse, how does that apply to the index? So I'm not going to say who said it because you sent me a direct message. Good question. Ask me tomorrow. I'm going to get you an answer on that. Lisa, those are all the questions that were sent to me. Are any being sent to you that you could see?
I don't have anything that's come to me directly. So
Okay.
It seems like that may be it for now. You were incredibly thorough with your presentation. So I'm sure, as you said at the very beginning, that you answered a lot of the questions that people were going to have through the course of what you were saying. So if there's nothing else that is coming through right now, we just want to thank you so much, Wayne, for being here.